Turning a plain backyard into a cottage retreat is less about adding more and more about using space thoughtfully. In this garden, curves, pathways, layered borders, subtle elevation, screening, and carefully placed focal points work together to reshape an ordinary lawn. Let's explore practical layouts that bring structure, softness, and lasting cottage character to a small outdoor space. The central lawn becomes a broad planted island, shaped with generous curves rather than rigid lines. Low cottage flowers soften the edges, while rounded shrubs rise gently behind them. A narrow gravel strip gives the border a clean finish without looking formal. Keeping the island wider toward the middle leaves enough lawn around it for comfortable circulation and maintenance. Morning light catches pale petals and textured foliage from different angles as you move around the garden. Fragrant herbs near the gravel edge add another sensory layer, especially when brushed while tending the beds. For a small backyard, choose plants with staggered heights and repeating tones, so the island reads as one cohesive form instead of a collection of unrelated specimens. A diagonal stepping stone path immediately changes how the backyard is perceived. Rather than following the shortest route, the stones travel from one corner toward the opposite side, drawing the eye across the full width of the garden. Deep borders alongside the path hold mixed cottage flowers, herbs, and shrubs, while a small seat at the far end gives the route a destination. For installation, begin by marking the diagonal with string before placing any stones. Keep walking surfaces comfortably spaced and level, then fill the gaps with gravel or low ground cover. Morning sun can illuminate one side of the planting, while afternoon light catches the opposite border. That changing perspective keeps a simple path visually interesting throughout the day. Lowering a small section of the backyard introduces an unexpected sense of depth. A gravel floor sits slightly beneath the surrounding lawn, edged with low natural stone and enclosed by generous cottage planting. A compact bistro table and chairs occupy the center, while layered flowers rise around the perimeter without blocking the view completely. Drainage deserves attention before excavating the seating area. A well-compacted gravel base should sit above an appropriate drainage layer, especially where rainwater collects naturally. In summer, the surrounding flowers soften the hard stone edges, while evening air carries their fragrance into the recessed nook. Sitting slightly below the lawn also gives the space a wonderfully tucked-away quality. A raised border along one side introduces elevation without dividing the whole backyard. Low retaining edges hold layers of cottage flowers and shrubs, while the opposite side stays comparatively open. That contrast prevents the garden from becoming visually crowded. The higher planting zone also gives the narrow yard a stronger vertical rhythm without requiring large structures or complicated construction. Use a modest retaining height that suits the existing grade and allows easy access for pruning. Reclaimed brick, natural stone, or weathered timber can define the edge while keeping the cottage character relaxed. Taller plants belong toward the rear, with lower varieties near the path. Sunlight will move across the raised border differently, revealing changing textures as the day progresses. An open wooden trellis positioned across the backyard introduces a clear threshold without becoming a solid barrier. Its simple vertical frame partially conceals a second planting area, while a narrow path passes directly through the opening. Beyond it, flowers and shrubs become denser, giving the garden a layered sequence instead of revealing everything from the house. Keep the trellis visually open so it screens without making the yard feel divided. A weathered timber finish works naturally with cottage planting, and climbing plants can be added gradually rather than covering the structure immediately. In spring, the framed opening can reveal fresh foliage beyond. Later, flowering growth softens the edges and makes the passage feel increasingly secluded. A circular lawn gives this backyard a distinctly different geometry. Instead of straight borders organizing the space, a rounded patch of grass becomes the central anchor, surrounded by irregular cottage beds. Flowering plants, rounded shrubs, and seasonal foliage form a loose ring, allowing the circle to remain recognizable while avoiding an overly formal appearance. Marking the circle accurately is the key practical step. A simple stake and string can establish the radius before edging begins. Keep the surrounding borders varied in width so the garden does not resemble a perfect wheel. Soft foliage spilling toward the lawn creates gentle transitions, while open grass catches sunlight and offers a cool, quiet place for a short pause. An offset stepping stone route can make a small backyard unfold gradually. Rather than aiming directly toward the destination, the path shifts gently from side to side through low-mounded flowers and taller border plants. Small openings between the planting allow brief views ahead, while each change in direction introduces another texture or garden detail. Natural stone works especially well here because irregular edges reinforce the informal layout. Set each piece securely into compacted soil or gravel and keep the walking rhythm comfortable. Leave enough space around the stones for plants to soften their edges without becoming a maintenance problem. After rain, damp stone and fresh foliage can give the root a particularly rich, earthy atmosphere. Placing a compact pergola in a rear corner gives the backyard an intentionally asymmetrical composition. Instead of centering the structure, the design lets one side carry architectural weight, while planting balances it from the opposite direction. A narrow path connects the house to the pergola, with cottage beds and climbing greenery forming a soft transition around the structure. A corner location can also preserve more usable open space than a central pergola. Measure the footprint carefully, leaving enough room for comfortable seating and maintenance access. Timber construction suits the garden naturally, especially when paired with weathered stone or gravel underfoot. In warm afternoon light, climbing foliage can cast delicate shadows across the seating area. Deep planting borders around every edge turn the backyard perimeter into a layered frame. Low flowers occupy the front, rounded shrubs form the middle tier, and taller plants soften the rear boundary. Keeping the center relatively open prevents the abundance from becoming overwhelming and gives the eye a calm area between the dense edges. Plant height should increase gradually toward fences and property boundaries, rather than jumping abruptly from ground cover to tall screening. Grouping several plants of the same type also reduces visual clutter and simplifies maintenance. In summer, the layered foliage catches breezes at different heights, while flowering plants near the front bring color close to paths and seating areas. A freestanding arbor placed midway through the garden becomes a strong visual crossing point. In front, an open lawn area remains simple and spacious. Beyond the arbor, planting becomes denser and more enclosed. A narrow path aligns the two zones, allowing the structure to function as both a focal point and a subtle transition. Position the arbor where it can be seen clearly from the house, rather than hiding it deep inside the planting. Its proportions should suit the small yard, with enough width for easy passage but without overwhelming nearby beds. Weathered timber and climbing greenery suit the cottage setting beautifully. As daylight shifts, the arbor casts changing linear shadows across the path. A shallow garden step can introduce elevation where a backyard is otherwise completely flat. One section remains open and lawn-focused, while the slightly higher or lower zone carries denser cottage planting. Low retaining edges define the change without turning it into a major construction project, giving the landscape a subtle architectural rhythm. Before adding the step, check existing drainage and establish stable levels carefully. Use slip-resistant natural stone or textured masonry for the walking surface, particularly where rain is frequent. A low planting edge beside the step helps integrate it into the landscape. After rainfall, water movement across the different levels can reveal whether adjustments are needed before planting becomes established. Following the outer edge with a meandering trail leaves the center of the backyard deliberately open. Curved planting beds guide the route around the perimeter, with flowers and shrubs appearing in changing combinations as the path bends. Small pauses along the way can accommodate a bench, a planter, or simply a wider section for standing and looking back. Keeping circulation near the boundary is useful when a small yard needs both movement and open space. Use broad curves rather than tight bends, and maintain a stable walking surface beneath the planting. Soft evening light can skim across the border foliage, while scents from herbs and flowers become noticeable as you pass close beside the beds. An asymmetrical courtyard places the paved sitting area deliberately off-center. One side holds a compact seating arrangement, while a broad flowing planting bed occupies the opposite side with irregular edges and layered cottage flowers. The unequal proportions are intentional, giving the garden movement while still maintaining enough visual weight around the seating zone. Choose paving that complements the surrounding landscape without making the courtyard look too formal. A simple rectangular or gently irregular surface can be easier to install and maintain than intricate patterns. Keep the planting bed generous enough to counterbalance the hardscape. Soft foliage around the seating area filters views of the paving and keeps the courtyard connected to the rest of the garden. Staggered shrubs and tall flowering perennials can form a living screen without closing off the entire backyard. Rather than one continuous hedge, the plants overlap at different heights and positions, concealing a small seating pocket behind them. The remaining lawn stays open, so privacy develops in one focused area rather than across the whole property. Choose plants according to their mature width, spacing them so the screen becomes dense naturally instead of requiring constant trimming. Mixing evergreen structure with seasonal flowering plants keeps the screen useful throughout the year. In summer, leaves rustle softly above the hidden seating area, while taller blooms catch sunlight and partially reveal glimpses of the garden beyond. Two narrow paths crossing near an off-center planting bed give the backyard several possible directions. One route can connect the house to a side garden, while the other leads toward a seeding or planting zone. The focal bed sits just away from the intersection, preventing the layout from becoming rigidly symmetrical and keeping the eye moving. Keep the paths distinct enough to read clearly, especially in a compact yard. Use consistent materials underfoot, then let the planting bed provide the contrast through height, texture, and seasonal color. A rounded shrub or flowering cluster can anchor the junction without obstructing movement. From above, the intersecting lines give the garden a simple, recognizable framework. A long sightline from the house toward a rear focal point gives a narrow backyard unusual visual depth. Dense cottage planting lines both sides of the view, while the central route remains relatively clear. At the far end, an arbor or distinctive planted feature provides a destination, drawing attention through the layers rather than demanding a large structure. Keep the central axis uncluttered so the eye can travel naturally toward the focal point. Planting should become slightly taller and fuller toward the edges, while the destination remains visible through the middle. Early morning light can illuminate the rear feature beyond darker foreground foliage, giving the garden a gentle sense of distance even within a compact space. From curved planting islands and diagonal paths to hidden garden rooms, layered borders and framed vistas, each layout offers a different way to give a small backyard purpose and personality. Thoughtful proportions, practical circulation, varied planting heights, and simple natural materials can make even a modest space feel beautifully considered. If you enjoyed these ideas, please like, subscribe to Rustic and Rooted, and share your favorite design in the comments.